All right, strap in, everyone. Today we're going deep on Mark Manson's The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Feck.
Oh yeah, this one's a bit different.
Right. It's not your typical self-help book. It's more like,
A
well,
kick in the pants.
aha,
Yeah.
a wake-up call to really live a good life.
Manson's great because he just throws out the whole good vibes only thing.
Hmm.
He's not trying to sugarcoat anything.
No.
He's like diving right into how messy it is to just be a person.
Yeah. It's like he's saying life's a roller coaster. Just embrace it.
Totally. You're going to die anyway, so figure out what matters and put your energy there.
Exactly.
He even uses this idea like you only have so many facts to give.
I love that analogy.
Like imagine you have a jar
Yeah.
and there are only so many in there.
Yeah.
What would you use them on?
Yeah.
What deserves your time, your energy, your attention?
It really makes you think
He does.
about all the energy we waste on things that in the grand scheme of things don't even matter.
Exactly.
So where does he even start with all this?
Well, he starts with a story about the writer Charles Bukowski.
Bukowski, huh?
Yeah. He wasn't exactly known for living a normal, successful life, struggling with addiction, a wild personal life. But he found success as a writer later on.
Okay, so not exactly following the rules,
Not at all.
but he made it work.
Yeah, and here's the thing, get this. His tombstone actually reads, "Don't try."
Wait, what? Don't try.
Yeah.
That's on the tombstone of a successful writer.
Exactly, and that's Manson's point.
Mm-hmm.
Bukowski's success, it didn't come from trying to fit in or be someone he wasn't.
Interesting.
It came from really accepting himself, flaws and all, and just writing honestly about it.
So he was given zero facts about trying to be what society expected him to be.
Yeah.
He was putting his energy into what actually mattered to him, expressing himself.
And that's what Manson's getting at, right? Real success is about figuring out your values and using your limited facts on those things.
So powerful.
It is.
What about you? What are you giving too many facts about right now? What's draining you? What doesn't line up with what really matters?
Yeah, those are tough questions.
They are. It's so easy to lose sight of the big picture when you're just caught up in the day-to-day.
Absolutely. And that's where Manson brings in this thing he calls the feedback loop from hell.
Feedback loop from hell.
Yeah. Have you ever felt stuck in this cycle of, like, negative emotions?
Oh, all the time.
Yeah.
Like you're stuck in traffic.
Yeah.
You get frustrated, then you get frustrated at yourself for being frustrated.
Yeah, that's exhausting. That's the loop in action. It can be really hard to break out of.
So why does it happen?
I think part of it is this pressure, to be happy all the time,
Oh, yeah?
especially with social media and everyone showing their perfect lives.
Yeah, it's like we're not allowed to feel anything but happiness.
Right. And Manson says that this pressure actually makes us feel worse when we do feel negative emotions.
Because we're judging ourselves for feeling bad.
Yeah. And that just makes it worse.
So we're making it worse by trying to, ignore our negative emotions.
That's right.
Huh.
So he suggests something pretty different.
Yeah.
Accept that you're going to have bad feelings.
Accept them.
Yeah, they're just part of being human.
Okay.
It's not about pretending to be happy all the time. It's about acknowledging all your emotions.
Okay, so accept them, but how do we actually get out of this loop?
Well, Manson introduces this character to help explain it.
A character.
Yeah. He calls him the disappointment panda.
Disappointment panda. Okay, I like him already.
Uh-huh. Right.
Straight shooter?
Oh, yeah. Tough love.
Okay.
And his message, happiness isn't about avoiding problems. It's about solving them.
So instead of trying to run from our negative emotions, we should be asking what they're telling us.
Exactly.
Like, if I'm feeling anxious, maybe it means there's something stressful I need to deal with.
Right. Manson compares it to physical pain.
Oh, okay.
Like when you touch a hot stove, the pain is a signal to protect you.
Right. So negative emotions are like these signals telling us there's a problem that needs attention.
They might not mean something's wrong with you,
Yeah.
but that there's a chance to grow.
Wow. Okay. That's a new way to think about it.
And those are often the good problems, the ones that make you stronger.
So it sounds like acceptance and responsibility are pretty important here.
You're getting it.
We need to accept our emotions and then take responsibility for how we react to the tough stuff.
Exactly. And Manson takes responsibility even further, saying we're responsible even when things are unfair.
Even when it's not our fault.
Yeah, he tells this story about being wrongly accused of something in school.
Wow.
He was totally the victim in the situation.
But he still felt responsible.
He realized that even though it wasn't his fault, he still had a choice in how to react.
Okay.
He could stay stuck feeling sorry for himself, or he could learn and move on.
So it's about focusing on what you can control.
Right. And that's where our values are really important. Our values determine how we measure success and happiness.
And those measurements can sometimes be, messed up. Like when we're comparing ourselves to others or chasing external validation.
Exactly. Manson compares Dave Mustaine, the guitarist from Megadeth, and Pete Best, the drummer who was fired from the Beatles.
Two musicians with very different stories.
Right. Mustaine had success with his band, fame, money, fans, but he always felt like a failure
Why?
because he was always comparing himself to Metallica, to their even bigger success.
So he was measuring himself by the wrong thing.
Exactly. He felt inadequate even though he was successful.
What about Pete Best?
Best struggled at first with being fired from the Beatles, but eventually found happiness
How?
by prioritizing different things, family, stability, and just playing music because he loved it.
So he changed what he valued.
Yeah, and that changed how he saw his life.
Wow. So it's not about those external achievements. It's
Mm-mm.
about matching your values to how you live.
Exactly what
Powerful
it is.
stuff.
It is. And then Manson goes into relationships and the importance of boundaries,
Even in love.
especially in love. And get this, he uses Romeo and Juliet to explain it.
Romeo and Juliet, they're not exactly the poster couple for healthy relationships.
Right, and that's Manson's point.
Okay.
He's challenging our idea of romantic love, the idea that's all over our culture.
Hmm.
He says Romeo and Juliet is actually a warning about unhealthy attachment and bad boundaries.
Wow.
They were so caught up in the intensity and drama that they made bad decisions.
That's interesting.
Yeah. He says we often mix up intensity and drama with real love.
Okay.
Real healthy love needs boundaries.
Yeah.
Knowing where your responsibility ends and your partner's begins.
So how do we build those healthy boundaries? How do we even know if we're getting caught up in that unhealthy intensity?
That's where the power of saying no comes in.
No, even in love.
Even in love.
Yeah.
Saying no means you respect yourself and your partner enough to be honest about your needs.
So it's about that responsibility again.
Exactly.
Taking responsibility for our own needs and not expecting our partner to always meet them or manage our feelings for us.
You got it. And speaking of responsibility, Manson wants us to rethink how we see failure.
Failure.
Yeah, he talks about his own early career, feeling like a failure.
He was broke, living on friends' couches, facing rejection as a writer.
Yeah, pretty rough.
Really demoralizing.
But he says starting from that low point actually freed him.
What do you mean?
He had nothing to lose, so he was less afraid to take risks and follow his entrepreneurial dreams.
Huh. So sometimes you have to hit rock bottom to build something strong.
Exactly. When you lose those illusions of success and perfection, you have to face your real values.
And that can make you grow?
It can. So failure can actually be liberating
Whoa.
and make you reevaluate things, question your path, and be open to new possibilities.
Wow.
So what are you avoiding right now because you're afraid to fail?
That's a big question.
It is.
I think we all have those areas where we play it safe because we're scared to mess up.
We do.
Yeah.
But Manson says we often get so caught up in reaching goals that we forget the values behind them.
Okay.
We focus on the outcome, the promotion, the house, the recognition, but we don't ask ourselves why we even want those things.
It's like going through the motions without really connecting to what's driving us.
Exactly. He uses Picasso as an example.
Picasso, the painter.
Yeah. He kept creating art even when he was old and successful.
He was so prolific.
He didn't let achievements or validation define him.
So what was driving him?
His main value was honest expression.
Wow.
It wasn't about fame or money. It was about the pure joy of creating.
Just expressing himself.
Exactly. And that's why he never lost his passion.
He enjoyed the journey, not just the destination.
And that's a great reminder for us, right?
It is. It's about finding meaning in what we do every day, not just in those big milestones.
Exactly. It's about aligning our actions with the values that bring us joy, no matter the outcome.
So it sounds like Manson's all about accepting what is, taking responsibility, and finding what truly matters.
You're getting it.
Yeah.
But he doesn't ignore the hard emotions that come with all this.
No, I imagine it's not all sunshine and roses.
Right. He acknowledges that pain is part of it. It's necessary for growth. He draws on the work of Kazimierz Dabrowski, a psychologist who studied World War II survivors.
Survivors.
Yeah. He wanted to understand how they dealt with trauma and became resilient.
So how people cope with really extreme situations.
Exactly. And Dabrowski found that many survivors develop a deeper sense of empathy and purpose after going through those tough experiences.
Like they were forced to confront the fragility of life, and that gave them a new perspective.
He said that pain and suffering can make us grow, force us to reevaluate what's important.
It's not about seeking out pain, but recognizing it can lead to transformation.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
about how we respond to it, how we use it to become stronger.
So it's not about avoiding the hard stuff, but finding the courage to face it.
Right. And Manson says it's often in those painful moments when our old ways of thinking aren't working that we're most open to change.
Like we need that crisis to shake us up and make us look at how we're living.
Yeah.
Powerful stuff.
It is. And Manson doesn't offer easy answers or quick fixes.
So no magic solutions.
Nope. He says embrace the mess, experiment, take action, and learn as you go.
Learn by doing.
Exactly. He says action often comes before motivation. You don't always have to wait for inspiration.
So just do it, even if it's scary.
He even uses this funny analogy of VCR questions.
VCR questions, like those old video cassette recorders.
Yeah. He says for his parents' generation, programming a VCR was this huge mystery.
It was so complicated.
But for him, growing up with technology, it was easy.
So it's those things that seem really hard to one person, but obvious to someone else.
Exactly. And Manson says we all have VCR questions in our lives.
Things we want to do, but are too scared to try.
Right. We build them up in our minds, but often the solution is to just take action.
To just do it.
Yeah. And he says action creates momentum, so even a small step, it can keep you moving forward.
A journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
Exactly. You don't need all the answers to start.
Wow, this is a lot to think about.
It is.
So it's about experimenting, seeing failure as feedback, and just taking that first step. This is already blowing my mind. And we're just getting started with the subtle art of not giving a fuck.
Just wait. There's more to come.
Yeah.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the subtle art of not giving a fuck.
Back for more. Last
Yeah.
time my brain was already doing somersaults with all these ideas.
That's a lot to take in.
It is. But how do we actually put this into practice,
Right.
It's one thing to talk about choosing values and embracing failure, but doing it in real life, that's different.
Well, that's where Manson gets really practical. He doesn't just leave us with these concepts.
Right.
He gives us tools to use these ideas in our daily lives.
I like that.
And one of the most powerful tools, choosing your values wisely.
Okay.
He emphasizes that our values determine how we measure our lives, what metrics we use.
Right, like with Mustaine and Best, those musicians we talked about,
Yeah.
both successful, but their values led to totally different experiences.
Exactly. Manson says many of us adopt values that make us compare ourselves and always feel like we're not enough. He calls it the tyranny of exceptionalism.
Tyranny of exceptionalism.
It sounds intense, right?
It does. What does it even mean?
Think about all the messages we get. Be the best, be extraordinary, achieve greatness.
Oh, yeah.
Everywhere we look, people are doing amazing things.
Social media, entrepreneurs, those viral videos, it's like everyone's exceptional.
Right, and that's the problem.
Okay.
It
well-
makes us think that's normal, that everyone should be exceptional.
And when we're not, we feel like failures.
Exactly.
We feel pressured to prove ourselves.
Yeah, it sets up this impossible standard.
So how do we escape it? Do we just ignore all those success stories?
Not really.
Mm.
It's more about recognizing that exceptionalism is not the norm.
Okay.
Manson says most of life happens in the mundane middle, the everyday stuff we often overlook.
The ordinary stuff.
Yeah. He says comparison is the thief of joy.
Ooh, I like that.
Right.
When we're busy comparing ourselves to others, we miss the beauty in our own lives.
Exactly. And Manson says this comparing comes from entitlement, this belief that we deserve certain things without putting in the work.
Entitlement.
Yeah, like we expect success to just be handed to us.
Without effort or struggle.
He tells this story about a guy he calls Jimmy, who wanted to be an entrepreneur.
Oh no, I know those types.
He talked a big game but never did anything.
A dreamer who never actually does anything.
Yeah. Jimmy thought he was destined for greatness but never put in the work.
He felt entitled to success.
Exactly. And that's why he never achieved anything meaningful.
So it's not enough to dream big, we actually have to do something.
Right. It's about action, about embracing the challenges.
So true.
Manson says real self-worth isn't about how good you feel when things are good.
Okay.
It's about how you handle the bad times.
So it's about our resilience.
Yeah. Our ability to learn from mistakes and keep going.
That makes sense.
It's about facing challenges, owning your shortcomings, and finding ways to improve.
Embracing those good problems we talked about.
Exactly. You're getting it.
And this whole idea of responsibility, it seems to be central to what Manson's saying.
It is. He says we're responsible for our lives, even when things feel out of control.
Okay, this is where I get a little lost.
Yeah, it's a tough one.
How can we be responsible when things are totally unfair?
Well, he uses this really powerful example, the story of Hiru Onoda,
Who's that?
a Japanese soldier who kept fighting World War II for almost 30 years after it ended.
Wait, what? He was fighting a war that was already over.
I know, crazy, right?
That's wild.
He was stationed on a remote island, and his orders were to never surrender.
Wow.
So he stayed hidden, believing the war was still going on.
He had no idea.
He was cut off from information, living in his own reality.
Wow, so even when people tried to tell him the war was over?
He didn't believe him. He thought it was a trick.
Wow, so his beliefs were so strong they kept him trapped in this alternate reality.
Exactly. And Manson uses this story to show how important it is to question our own assumptions.
Our assumptions about the world.
Yeah. And to be open to changing our minds when we get new information.
So we need to be a little skeptical, not just about what other people tell us, but also about our own beliefs.
Exactly. It's
Well,
about being humble enough to say, maybe I'm wrong.
that's hard though, isn't it?
It is. It's
Yeah.
way easier to just stick with what we already believe.
Especially if we've believed it for a long time.
Right, but Manson says clinging to certainty can actually blind us.
Blind us.
Yeah. It stops us from seeing things clearly and adapting to new situations.
So how do we break free from this need for certainty? How do we embrace the unknown?
Well, Manson says we need to cultivate a sense of doubt.
Doubt.
Not the kind that paralyzes you, but the kind that makes you curious, makes you question things.
A healthy skepticism.
Yeah. It's about being open to different perspectives, to the idea that you might be wrong.
Instead of always trying to be right.
Exactly. It's a powerful way to learn and grow.
So it's about being curious, about being willing to say, I don't know.
Right, and this applies to how we see ourselves too. We all have these stories we tell ourselves about who we are and what we can do.
Oh, those limiting beliefs like, I'm not good at that, or I could never do that.
Those are the runs. They can really hold us back, even if they're based on fear or past experiences.
So how do we rewrite those stories? How do we challenge those beliefs?
Manson has some good questions for that.
Yeah.
He says, ask yourself, what if I'm wrong about this?
That's a big one.
It is. It's easy to get defensive when someone challenges our beliefs.
Totally.
But Manson says embracing the possibility of being wrong is how we open ourselves to growth.
So it's about curiosity, not defensiveness.
Exactly. It's about saying, maybe there's another way to look at this.
Interesting.
He also says, ask yourself, would being wrong create a better problem than my current problem?
Okay, that's a good one.
It makes you think about the consequences of holding on to your beliefs.
Right. Sometimes our beliefs might actually be hurting us, even if they feel comfortable.
Yeah, so it's about letting go of beliefs that don't serve us anymore.
Even if it feels scary or uncertain.
Exactly. And Manson says, we're all wrong sometimes. It's part of being human.
It's about learning from mistakes and moving on.
Right. We're all works in progress.
So failure is just part of the process.
Exactly. Which brings us to another of Manson's big ideas. Failure is the way forward.
Wait, how can failing be the way forward?
He's not saying we should try to fail,
Okay.
but that we should see failure as part of growth.
So it's not the end, it's a stepping stone.
Exactly. He talks about graduating college during the recession.
Ah, rough timing.
It was. He felt like a failure from the start, no jobs, nothing.
Really tough.
But he realized that starting from that low point actually gave him freedom.
How?
He had nothing to lose, so he took risks, followed his entrepreneurial dreams.
So like, what do I have to lose?
Yeah.
It's like hitting rock bottom and then building a solid foundation from there.
Exactly. When you lose those illusions of success, you have to face your real priorities.
And that can be powerful.
It can. It forces you to grow.
So failure can actually be a good thing.
In a way, yeah.
It makes you reevaluate, question things, and be open to new possibilities.
Exactly.
It's making me think about all the times I've held myself back because I was afraid to fail.
What if you had embraced those potential failures? What could you have learned?
Whoa.
We all do it. We play it safe because we're afraid to mess up. It's natural.
It is.
But Manson says we get so focused on the goal that we forget the values behind it. We want the promotion, the house, the recognition, but why? What those things really mean to us.
It's like we're on autopilot, not really thinking about what's driving us.
Exactly. He talks about Picasso, the painter.
Picasso. He was incredibly successful.
He was. But he kept painting, even when he was old, and didn't need to.
What kept him going?
He didn't define himself by his achievements.
So what was his driving force?
Honest expression.
Wow.
It wasn't about the fame or money. It was the joy of creating, of being true to himself.
So powerful. beautiful.
And that's why he never lost his passion.
He loved the process, not just the end result.
Exactly. It's a reminder that the journey matters.
It does.
It's about finding meaning in everyday actions, not just the big milestones.
And aligning those actions with our true values, the things that make us happy.
Exactly. You're getting it.
This is all so inspiring, but Manson doesn't sugarcoat things, does he?
No, he doesn't. He acknowledges that pain is part of growth. It's inevitable.
That makes sense.
He talks about the work of Kazimierz Dabrowski, a psychologist who studied World War II survivors.
Survivors of the war.
Yeah. He wanted to understand how they dealt with trauma and found resilience.
So how people cope with extreme situations.
Exactly. And Dabrowski found that many survivors developed a deeper sense of empathy and purpose after going through those tough experiences.
So facing those challenges actually changed them for the better.
In a way, yeah. He said that pain and suffering can be catalysts for growth.
They force us to reevaluate what's important,
Exactly. It's not about seeking out pain, but about how we respond to it.
how we use it to come stronger.
Right. So it's not about avoiding pain, but about finding the courage to face it.
And Manson says it's often when we're in pain, when our old ways of thinking aren't working, that we're most open to change.
Like, we need that breakdown to wake us up.
Yeah.
Makes you see things differently.
Wow, this is intense.
It is. But Manson doesn't offer easy answers or quick fixes.
So what does he say?
He says, embrace the mess, experiment, take action, and learn as you go.
Just do it, figure it out along the way.
Exactly. He says action often comes before motivation.
So we don't have to wait for inspiration to strike.
Nope. Just start doing, and the motivation will follow.
That's interesting.
He even uses this funny analogy of VCR questions.
VCR question, like with those old video cassette recorders?
Yeah. He says for his parents, programming a VCR was a huge mystery.
Oh, I remember those days.
Ooh.
So complicated.
Right. But for him, growing up with technology, it was easy.
So it's those things that seem really hard to one person, but obvious to someone else.
Exactly. And Manson says we all have these VCR questions in our lives, things we want to do but are scared to try.
Like asking someone out on a date or having a tough conversation.
Those are the ones. We build them up in our minds, but often the solution is to just take action.
Just do it, even if it's scary.
He says action creates momentum, so even a small step can keep you moving forward.
Like a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
Exactly. You don't need all the answers to start, just take that first step.
So much wisdom. This is already changing how I think about things.
That's great to hear. It's all about shifting your perspective.
And we're only halfway through our deep dive into the subtle art of not giving a feck. We're back, ready to wrap up our deep dive into the subtle art of not giving a feck.
Part 3, the grand finale.
It feels like we've already covered so much, choosing our values, reframing failure, those tricky relationships.
Yeah, we've been through a lot.
But there's this one big thing we haven't really tackled head on.
What's that?
Uncertainty.
Oh yeah, the big one.
It's like this thing we try to avoid at all costs.
We crave certainty, right?
Yeah.
Like knowing what's going to happen, being in control.
We want that roadmap, that guarantee that we're making the right choices.
But life doesn't really work that way, does it?
No, we plan and strategize, but life always throws curveballs.
And Manson says those curveballs, those unexpected twists and turns, that's where the real growth happens.
In the unknown. That's scary.
It is. Our brains are wired to look for patterns, to make sense of things.
Even if it means clinging to old beliefs or stories that aren't helpful anymore.
Right. Remember Hiru Onoda, that soldier who kept fighting World War II even after it was over?
Yeah, he was stuck in his own reality.
He clung to that belief because it gave him certainty, even though it was totally out of sync with what was actually happening.
It's like we choose feeling certain over knowing the truth.
And Manson says this need for certainty can keep us stuck.
Stuck. How?
It stops us from seeing things clearly, from adapting to new information.
Like we're wearing blinders, blocking out anything that doesn't fit our beliefs. Okay, so how do we get rid of those blinders? How do we learn to be okay with not knowing everything?
Well, Manson says we need to cultivate a sense of doubt.
Doubt. Like being unsure of ourselves.
Not exactly. It's more about having a healthy skepticism, questioning things, being open to different perspectives.
Okay, so not being afraid to say, I don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And being open to learning new things.
And he also says that our values, the things that are important to us, they can change over time.
Oh, yeah, totally.
Like Pete Best, the drummer who was fired from the Beatles.
Right. He could have stayed bitter, but he redefined his values, prioritized family, and the joy of music.
He found a different kind of success, one that truly made him happy.
Exactly. And Manson gives us this really simple tool for developing this open-mindedness.
A tool. What is it?
He says, ask yourself, what if I'm wrong about this?
Wow, that's a tough one.
It is. But it forces us to step outside our comfort zones, to challenge our own biases.
To consider that maybe we don't have all the answers.
Exactly. It's about being curious, not defensive.
So embracing uncertainty, that sounds pretty scary.
It can be. But Manson reminds us that real growth happens outside our comfort zones.
When we let go of that need to control everything.
Exactly. That's when we discover new possibilities and create a more fulfilling life.
It's like that saying, live the questions now, maybe you'll gradually live your way into the answer.
Beautiful, isn't it?
It is. It reminds us that the journey is just as important as the destination.
Okay, so we embrace uncertainty, we let go of control, then what?
What's the point of it all?
That's the big question, right? Manson doesn't give a single answer. He wants each of us to find our own.
Our own values, our own meaning.
Exactly. He reminds us that we're all going to die.
Whoa, okay, heavy stuff.
It's true, though, and it's something we often try to ignore.
But maybe facing that truth can actually set us free.
It can. It frees us from the pressure of needing to achieve some big, predetermined outcome.
When we accept death, we can really start living.
Yeah. We can focus on what matters. The
Right.
small moments, the connections we make, the joy we find.
And Manson's big takeaway, we choose what we give a feck about.
We choose what we invest our energy in, what experiences we prioritize.
We choose to embrace the uncertainty, to learn from our failures, and to create a life that's meaningful to us.
Even though we know it won't last forever.
Wow, this deep dive has been amazing. It's made me rethink my priorities, embrace my flaws, and just approach life with more courage, you know?
It's been great exploring this with you.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the subtle art of not giving a feck. We hope you found it insightful.
And remember, it's not about being indifferent. It's about choosing your battles, taking responsibility, and living authentically.
Thanks for listening.